The eCom Seller Summit was created to prove that with the right tools and training, anyone and everyone can make money in e-commerce. So many people want to try their hand at e-commerce, selling on eBay, Amazon, Shopify, and more, but they're afraid they won't be successful. This summit will show you that there's many ways to do e-commerce, and there are many platforms you can explore because e-commerce really has no limits. It really can pay your bills, and e-commerce never sleeps. There's nothing like waking up to profits from getting sales all night long. My name is Nicole Whitlock, and this is the eCom Seller Summit.
Hey everyone, a very warm welcome to my masterclass at the eCom Seller Summit. I'm going to be talking about how you can source from India profitably. So let's get started. So first of all, here's a rundown of the topics of my presentation today. So I'm going to give you an overview of how you can source from India, and then we'll get into some of the things that you can do to source profitably. And I'll also share some tips on how to start sourcing, how you can find suppliers in India. I'll also talk a little bit about this virtual India sourcing show that I host every month. And then I'll also talk a little bit about my India sourcing trip. Okay, a quick background about myself. So I've been working in the sourcing industry for almost 19 years. I worked in India, the Philippines. I was based in China for almost 9 years, and I'm currently in Singapore. So sourcing is my background. That is really what I specialize in. When I was based in China and also in India, one of the things that I used to do was write these research reports on how various products are manufactured in these countries. So I visited hundreds of factories over the years and have a really good understanding of how manufacturing happens and what are the issues that importers face when they source from these countries. I also organize Amazon seller conferences and events in Hong Kong and Singapore. And I also organize a sourcing trip to India, as I just mentioned. I'm an Amazon seller myself. Okay, so first of all, let's get started with an overview of what are some of the pros and cons of sourcing from India. So let's talk about the advantages, first of all. One of the biggest advantages of sourcing from India, specifically for Amazon sellers, is that you'll find a lot of very unique products in India that you'll not be able to find in other countries such as China. Now, of course, China is the world's factory, so to speak, and you'll be able to find any product in China. But India specializes in certain product categories, and those are the categories that you'll find they're very high quality premium products, and also the prices are more competitive. So some of the categories that India specializes in are wooden handcrafted products, metal handcrafted products, a lot of organic cotton-based products, furniture, furnishings, a lot of very beautiful textiles and fabrics you can find in India. And these are very specific to India. You'll find that the embellishments on the fabric, for example, or the blends that you can find in these fabrics are not really found in other countries. So you'll find a lot of very unique products in India. And, some of these products can also be, they're very premium and very high end products, so they can command higher prices and therefore be more profitable. Also, one of the things you'll notice is that a lot of suppliers in India can accept low MOQs. And this is specifically for handmade products. So for example, when you go to China, the MOQs are typically 500 to 1,000 pieces. Whereas if you source from India, then typically the MOQs are a few hundred pieces, let's say 300 to 200 to 300 pieces. But they can even do test orders for as low as 50 pieces. But of course, if you have to get some product development done, if you have your own unique designs, the MOQs may be higher. But if you want to source one of the products that is already in their catalog and maybe you want to make some minor changes, then the MOQs can be pretty low. So that's a really huge advantage I find for Amazon sellers specifically. Maybe you're just starting out, you don't have a very high budget, or maybe you're an established seller, but you want to test a product category without investing thousands of dollars in a specific product. So those sorts of things can be done in India very easily. Also, you'll find that a lot of the suppliers that you deal with, they'll speak fluent English, so communication becomes a bit easier and smoother. There's not much that's kind of lost in translation, or you won't have issues talking to them over Zoom or having a conversation. Sometimes in China you'll find people may not speak English very fluently, and so that can sometimes become a challenge. Also, there are no trade tariffs on products that are imported from India to the US. Of course, there are some import duties, but they're very minimal, so about 2 to 4%. Whereas if you source certain products from China and you import them into the US, there are 20 to 25, sometimes even 30% tariff on some of these products. Also, there are a lot of companies in India that are very export focused. I mean, this is similar to China as well, but these companies are very familiar with the sort of quality standards and the regulations that are required in overseas markets. And they also work with foreign designers in many cases. So they are really aware of the kind of designs and the products that are popular in these markets. Many of these companies also exhibit at overseas trade shows, so they really keep an eye on what are the trends that are popular in overseas markets, and they launch products on a regular basis. For each season, in fact, they launch a new line of products, and so you'll find that the designs that they offer are very in tune with what is popular in overseas markets, such as the US or Europe, depending on where you're from. You'll also find that there are a lot of eco-friendly products in India. And in case this is a category that you're looking into, and a lot of Amazon sellers, I know they want to source eco-friendly products. That is a huge and a fast growing category in India. And the prices and designs are very competitive as well. And just to give you some examples, so first of all, organic cotton. That is a huge category in India, and you can find a lot of different products that are made from from organic cotton. For example, there's furnishings, there's baby wear, there's kitchen aprons and things like that. So a lot of different products that you can find made from cotton, organic cotton. And in fact, there are a lot more GOTS certified factories in India than there are in China. So India is in fact the second largest producer of cotton, and you'll find that there are a lot of different, lots of different variety available, lots of different products available. Other eco-friendly products are things like disposable plates made from areca palm leaves, or maybe disposable plates made from sugarcane waste. You'll find a lot of jute products as well. Jute is a very eco-friendly material. Coir is another material that's eco-friendly, that is actually made from the husk of coconut. That's very, very eco-friendly. There are quite a few companies that make doormats from this material, coir. And some of the other very interesting and new materials that I've seen suppliers been using are things like that are alternatives to leather. For example, cactus leather or cork leather, or even things like very different cutting edge kind of materials that are very eco-friendly. They're also known as vegan materials nowadays. Another advantage is that there are lower labor costs in India. So in China, overall production costs and labor costs have been increasing over the past few years. And in fact, that is one reason why about 5 to 8 years ago, a lot of the manufacturing of apparel, specifically the low-end apparel manufacturing, has been moving out of China, and it's been going to lower production cost areas such as Bangladesh, India, Sri Lanka, Indonesia. And so if your product is more manual, if it requires manual labor, then you might find that the prices are in fact lower in India than they are in China. There's some cons as well sourcing from India. So first of all, there's a limited product range. As I mentioned previously, China manufactures anything and everything, but with India, you'll find that there's a limited product range. And for example, you can't find any electronics or electrical kind of products in India. Those are better sourced in China. That is changing. However, I do see more factories being set up that do manufacture electronics products, but as of now, they're not very competitively priced in India. India specializes more in the products that are made from natural materials like wood, metal, eco-friendly kind of materials, cotton, jute, those sorts of materials. Sometimes you might find that logistics service providers like freight forwarders, they may not be familiar with FBA requirements. However, that is changing. I mean, increasingly, there are more Amazon e-commerce sellers sourcing from India. And so more of these service providers are getting familiar with FBA requirements, but you just have to be a bit careful when you approach a freight forwarder and make sure that they understand you need to send your product to Amazon, to an Amazon warehouse. And in case there are multiple warehouses that your shipment needs to go to, you need to make sure that the service provider or the freight forwarder is able to manage that as well. For some of the handmade products, lead times can be longer. So just keep that in mind if you are sourcing from India. And you may need to maybe manage your inventories a little bit better. But it's not a big challenge, but something just to keep in mind because these products are handmade, the lead times are typically longer. Also, in some cases, the infrastructure is not as developed as it is in China. And this is not a big challenge when you're sourcing from India as such. But again, things like, maybe the ports are not as automated as they are in China. So instead of taking 2 days at the port, your shipment might take, 4 days. So just the little things. You also have to keep in mind that the monsoon season in India affects production and manufacturing in a significant way. For example, um, Mumbai, where the most important port is located in Mumbai, and that city sometimes gets flooded when it rains a lot in the monsoon season, and that might affect things like maybe the roads are blocked, or there are delays at the port because of flooding. So that's just something to keep in mind. The monsoon season in India is from July to September. And so if you are shipping any of your shipments during these months, just sort of keep that in mind. Okay, so here are some tips on how you can source profitably from India. So one of the biggest things when you're sourcing from India is to understand that India is a really big country, and there are different production hubs for different products. And the reason these production hubs have developed as production hubs for certain products is because of the proximity to maybe raw materials, or maybe the weather in that area is conducive to producing those kinds of products. So just to give you a couple of examples, Tirupur is a city in South India, and this is one of the main production hubs for cotton products. And the reason that it has developed as a main production hub is because there are lots of cotton farms and mills around that area. And so all the suppliers there have easy access to raw materials. And so if you are sourcing cotton products, and specifically knitted cotton products like, jerseys or t-shirts or socks, it's better to source them from this center, from Tirupur, because all of the suppliers here have easier access to raw materials, and the supply chains are very well developed in this area as well, so you will get better prices. Whereas if you source from maybe north of India, then you'll find that maybe the companies over there are trading companies, or maybe because they have to buy these raw materials from south, they may not be that price competitive. Similarly, if you're sourcing wooden products, then it's better to source wooden products from the north, because there's a city known as Jaipur in the north that is well known for wooden products. And one of the reasons it has developed as a production hub for wooden products is because it's a desert area and it's very dry. And so that is also very conducive to producing wooden products, because of course wood needs to be dried and it can retain moisture. Another thing to keep in mind is that you need to know the distance from port, like how far is your factory from the port. Now, if you know what India looks like, it's a triangular kind of shape, right? It's a peninsula that's surrounded by sea on three sides at the bottom. So the most common port in India is the Mumbai port, and that's where 80% of the shipments depart from that port, right? So it is very likely that your shipment will also go from the Mumbai port. Now, if you're sourcing a product from the east of India, let's say Kolkata or one of the eastern states, then you have to keep in mind that there is some time that will be taken for trucking. So because the product has to be trucked or it has to be brought by train to the port in Mumbai that is in the west. So that might take, 3, 4, 5, sometimes even a week, depending on how far the factory is from the port. So that's something to keep in mind. Just know where your factory is located and how long it will take to to get the product to the port. A lot of Amazon sellers source wooden and metal products from India, and those are sourced from the northern part of India. There are a couple of cities there that specialize in these kinds of products, like Muradabad, Jaipur, Saharanpur, and so when you're sourcing from these places, sometimes the supplier might quote you FOB Delhi. Now, note that Delhi is actually a dry port. It is not really a seaport. And so the product, your shipment still needs to be taken from Delhi to Mumbai if you're doing a sea shipment. So just keep that in mind. FOB Delhi does not mean that your product can actually be is on a ship. You still have to send it from Delhi to Mumbai. Okay. The next most important thing to keep in mind when you're sourcing from India is supplier selection. You want to make sure that you spend a lot of time and energy selecting the right supplier when you are sourcing from India. Now, there are literally hundreds and thousands of suppliers out there, right? Because India is a really big country. There's a lot of demand domestically for products as well. So there are quite a few suppliers that actually focus on the domestic market. So you want to avoid sourcing from these companies because many of these companies are not aware of quality standards of overseas markets, or maybe the regulations of overseas markets. Some of them might not even have an export import license. So if that's the case, you won't be able to ship products out of India. So you want to make sure that you're sourcing from an export focused supplier, and that will really save you a lot of time, money, and effort as well, because these suppliers are actually familiar with the entire export process. And keep in mind that if you're sourcing wooden products, there are certain requirements of importing wooden products into the US. For example, you need to do fumigation, and you also need to make sure that you filled in certain forms. And also, these suppliers that make wooden products, they have to complete a certificate that's given by the government of India to sort of declare that they have sourced the wood from from the proper channels. So if they're not export focused, they kind of don't know all of those processes and all of the forms that need to be filled in, and so you might get into your products might get stuck if they're not familiar with all of those processes. So definitely make sure that they're export focused, they have export experience. Also try to understand what their capability is, what is their core expertise. Now, and depending on your specific product, you want to make sure that the supplier that you're dealing with really can match the expertise or the product capability that you are looking for. Just to give you a couple of examples, let's say you're looking for a wooden product, right? And let's say that the wooden product requires some sort of laser cutting. You want to make sure that the supplier has that capability in-house, that they have cutting machines in-house, so that it's not outsourced, that can affect quality. Similarly, if you're looking for certain types of finishes, or if you're looking for a certain way that the wood is manufactured, you want to make sure that the supplier has that capability in-house and that they really specialize in that. Because if they don't, then it's going to be difficult for them to first of all develop your product, and if it's a very complex kind of design, then they also might have issues getting it right. So you want to make sure that you check their capability, ask them if they've done that product before, and then kind of make sure that they're comfortable with the entire process as well. You also want to source from the right factory size. There are lots of different types of factories in India. There are small workshops type factories with, maybe 10, 12 workers. There are also huge factories with hundreds of workers. So if you're just starting out, if you are a new buyer and you want to source in smaller quantities, then it's better to talk to maybe a mid-sized kind of factory. But if you are a large buyer and if you're selling in the millions, and you are also going to be placing orders by container, then of course you want to be able to source from a large factory that has capacity to accept those kinds of orders. So just keep in mind that the factory size is pretty important as well. Negotiation. This is something that can really impact your bottom line, and it can improve your profitability significantly. First of all, don't hesitate to negotiate. I mean, suppliers, whether in India or China, they expect you to negotiate. So that's totally normal. It's the culture in these countries to negotiate. In fact, I'll tell you this funny story. When I moved to China in 2006, one of the first things that my colleagues in my office taught me was piani dien, which means make it cheaper. So that was the first thing that I learned. And that was mostly, if I went shopping for clothes or something, then that's something that I could use to get a better price. So even while shopping locally, it's totally normal to negotiate. And the same goes for business as well when you're sourcing products. So don't hesitate to negotiate. Some of the ways or some tips to get a better price is, sometimes you can try to get a cost breakdown of the various parts and processes of the product. And maybe they won't give this to you, upfront when you're placing your first order, because they sort of need to get a bit of a trust between, with you before they can sort of give all of this information to you. But once you've placed a couple of orders, that's the time when you can probably ask for a cost breakdown and sit down with them and say that, hey, okay, I think this is, this sort of material is costing a lot over here. And can we maybe make a change in the material? If the material is too thick, for example, can we make it a bit thinner without affecting the quality and the functionality of the product? Or can we use a different material? Or can we change the finish? What exactly affects the price of a product? And even when you're just starting to place an order, this is a conversation that you can really have with the supplier, that, hey, tell me what exactly is causing the higher price, and what can we do to bring the price down. Also ask for price validity. This is quite common. So if you are getting a quote, ask them if the price is valid for 3 months or 6 months, so that in case you need to think about the product, in case you need to maybe do some research on Amazon to make sure that there is demand and keyword search volume for the product, you've sort of locked in the price that they have given to you, because they can always come back and say that, hey, raw material costs have gone up, or for whatever reason, we need to increase the price. Another thing to keep in mind is price is not the only thing that you can negotiate for. You can negotiate for a lot of different things like payment terms, delivery lead time, packaging. You can ask them to include the packaging of your product in the price that they have quoted you, and that is very, very common. And especially if you just have a simple kind of packaging that's like maybe a brown box with some printing on it, or maybe a sticker on it, you can definitely include that. Of course, if your packaging is very customized, you might want to work with a separate printing company to get your boxes made. Also, functions, features, those things can be customized, or you can negotiate for those as well. For example, if they're not agreeing to reducing the price, then maybe you can say that, hey, but can we have this extra feature or this extra function in the product? MOQs, that is something that you can also negotiate for, especially when you're just starting out. If you want to place test orders, then you can always ask them to, for a lower MOQ. And sometimes they will also agree to lower MOQs if you pay a slight premium on the price. So let's say the price of the product they have quoted you for, maybe 500 pieces is $5. Let's just take an example. But you want to source, let's say, 200 pieces. So you can ask them, what is the surcharge, or how much extra do I have to pay for a smaller MOQ? right? And sometimes they might say that, okay, you need to pay like 10 cents more, 20 cents more, because MOQs in many cases is just something that suppliers, it's just a number that suppliers come up with. It's sort of the volume at which they think that it's going to be viable for them to process your order, right? I mean, sometimes there are specific things that affect the MOQ, and MOQs are not flexible. And to give you an example, if you're sourcing a textile based product, let's say, and you have a customized print that you want on the textile, then they have to get that fabric from the textile manufacturer. And the textile manufacturer may have an MOQ on how much fabric they can print or customize for the factory. So, in that case, the MOQ may be not the supplier's MOQ, but it's actually the fabric supplier's MOQ or the textile supplier's MOQ. So that's also something to keep in mind when you are talking about MOQs. Try to get an understanding of what is the reason for the high MOQs. And is there something that you can do to work together to make it lower? Yeah, you can also ask for samples if you are, especially starting out. You can ask for samples without having to pay for them. And in fact, if the supplier does ask you to pay for samples, then you can maybe ask them to reimburse the sample cost to you once you place an order. And there are other things like photography, packaging, labeling, all of these different things, do add up to your cost. And if you can ask the supplier to manage all of these things for you, then that adds up to your bottom line. And every penny that you save when you're sourcing, of course, affects your overall bottom line and gives you more money for PPC, right? Okay, the next tip for you is warranty on products. So, I mean, we're not talking about electronic products or electrical products. We're talking about home products, gift items, and these are metal and wood products. But you can ask for things like a warranty on the workmanship or the material, or maybe the surface coating of metal products. Or maybe you can ask for a warranty on, how durable the product is. For example, if it's a wooden product that has many joints, so you can ask for a warranty on the durability of the products as well. And of course, you need to make sure that you take all of this in writing in a contract, and it's very, very, all of the requirements are very, very clearly outlined and accepted by the supplier. But this is definitely a possibility that you can discuss with your supplier. And what happens is, in case when the supplier agrees to this, you can also agree on a specific time period. So let's say 6 months or 1 year. And if you do get any returns from your customers on Amazon because of issues in the quality, then the supplier can either give you a refund, or you can also ask them to maybe give you a discount or some sort of concession for the next order that you place with them. So that's a possibility as well. Of course, it doesn't really make sense to ship the product back to them, and if there are issues, then you don't want to ship the product back to them in India. That's going to cost you more. So usually you would just ask for sort of a refund or maybe some sort of concession on the next order. Another tip is to be aware of cultural sensitivities. And how does this affect your profitability? Relationships are really, really important when you're sourcing from India. And I know you guys who are sourcing from China, you guys probably know the concept of guanxi, and that's very important. But in India, it's even more important. And if you do build trust and relationships with a supplier, if they sort of trust you, you are going to get better payment terms. You're going to get priority treatment. They're going to be more responsive to you. They're going to be more flexible when it comes to your orders, whether it's for product development, whether it's for lead times or MOQs or anything like that. They're definitely going to be more flexible. So relationships are really important. And how do you build good relationships? I mean, you just build good relationships by being a good buyer, first of all. So, make your payments on time, and make sure that, of course, you have to be professional. And Also, sometimes it helps to be casual as well. You want to maybe ask about their families and wish them on their birthdays, or maybe wish them on certain festivals. So that's one way as well to sort of build a relationship. And it's not only about business, it's not only about the transaction. After all, we are humans, we are people doing business with each other, right? So you can sort of have those more softer kind of things. Also, respect religion and holidays in India. So India is a very religious country, and there are lots of different religions. So there's Hinduism, there's Islam, there's Christianity, and there are different holidays for different religions. So, for example, Christmas is a holiday. There's certain festivals for Muslims that are holidays as well, and of course Hindus too. So just be a bit respectful of that. And if they do have a holiday, then just don't follow up with them for work things, for example, or don't push them to if there are deadlines that need to be met, for example, but there is a holiday because of a festival, you kind of need to be aware of that as well. And in fact, you should be talking to your supplier about holidays too, because this is something that can affect your lead times in India. Even though there's no long holiday like there is in China, in Chinese New Year is a holiday for almost a month. There's no month-long holiday in India, but there are lots of 1 days, 2 days kind of holidays here and there throughout the year. So yeah, it's a good idea to, first of all, ask your supplier, hey, what are the holidays that I need to be aware of? And, let me know if there are any holidays that are going to affect my production. Okay, so let's also talk about some tips on how to start sourcing from India. How do you find suppliers? So the first thing that you can do is just Google suppliers, because Google and it's all of the Google websites are not blocked in India like they are in China. So a lot of the export focused companies, their websites are actually indexed on Google. So you will be able to find many of these suppliers on Google itself. Of course, you need to vet them and make sure that they are export focused and they're legitimate companies and everything, but it's easy to find suppliers on Google. Also, you can use supplier directories such as Alibaba and Global Sources. These are the two main export focused directories that are there. And of course, both of these directories have a lot of suppliers from China. In fact, the majority of suppliers on these directories are from China, but there are also suppliers from India and other countries on these websites. In fact, both Alibaba and Global Sources have offices in India, and they're very actively recruiting suppliers for their websites. And what you need to do on these websites is actually do a search for the product that you're looking for. And after that, do use the country location filter to search for suppliers in India. So on the left hand side, you'll find that there are a lot of different filters, and use the country location or the supplier location filter to look for suppliers from India, or in fact other countries as well. Now, India Mart is another directory that you'll come across when you're sourcing from India, but be very, very careful when you're sourcing from India Mart, because a lot of the suppliers on this website are domestic focused, because India Mart as a website is very domestic focused. There are a lot of trading companies and importers on India Mart that actually import products from China and sell to the domestic market. So there are, like wholesalers, importers, and it's very domestic focused. So in fact, you'll find that most of the prices also on India Mart are in rupees and not in dollars. That in itself should tell you that it is domestic focused. So be very wary when you're sourcing from India Mart. You may find some good manufacturers there, and they may be good exporters as well, but you have to vet them really well and make sure that you are talking to the right factory. Another way to find suppliers is to look for export promotion councils in India. Now, these export promotion councils are actually government organizations, and their main objective is to help promote exports in certain categories. So there are export promotion councils for various industries. For example, there's a cotton export promotion council, silk export promotion council, handicrafts, export promotion council, etc., etc. So what you can do is, depending on what your product category is, do a search for Export Promotion Council India. Once you land on their website, some of the export promotion councils have supplier directories on their website itself, so you can download that list, or you can maybe send them an email and ask them to send you the list. Now, usually what will happen is you'll get a long list of like hundreds, sometimes even thousands of suppliers, and you'll have to sift through all of the lists and make sure that, like you'll have to call those companies or maybe email them and really look through the list very carefully. But at least you have a good list to start with, and you can be sure that all of these companies are exporters, because only exporters are allowed to join these councils. So at least you know that these are export focused companies, so it's a good list to start with, but it does take time sometimes to filter through the supplier lists that are provided by the councils. You can also use sourcing agents when you source from India. If you're unable to find a supplier, there are lots of different sourcing agents, and they typically charge a percentage of the FOB value of your order. And they will typically, search the supplier for you. They will negotiate, they will help place orders. They will also do the quality control in all of the inspections. So you may not need to get a third party inspection done when you're using a sourcing agent. So even though you're paying a commission to the agent, if you look at the overall scheme of things, you may be able to, it may be more cost effective for you to use a sourcing agent. You can also visit trade shows when we can travel, of course. One of the most important trade shows in India is known as the Delhi Fair. This is, it's held twice a year, every April and October. And it has almost 4,000 suppliers that exhibit there. And most of these suppliers, or all of these suppliers, are exporters, because this fair is export focused, and it's organized by the Export Promotion Council for Handicrafts. So it is, it's a very, very export focused fair. And in fact, it's only open to overseas buyers and maybe buying agents who are based in India, but it's not open to the general public in India. You can also visit virtual fairs. So Virtual India Sourcing Show is actually a monthly show that I organize together with my partners. I'll talk a little bit about that on the next slide. And also the Delhi Fair, because of the pandemic, it has been hosted virtually for the last year, in fact, and probably this year as well. So you can also just do a search for Virtual Delhi Fair and look through their exhibitor list. And again, all of those companies are very export focused. Okay, I want to spend a couple of minutes just to talk about Virtual India Sourcing Show. So this is a live webinar that I do every month with 5 to 10 suppliers. And basically the suppliers come online and they talk about their companies, they share their stories, they talk about their backstory and what are their values and how the company started. And they also show their products. So some of the companies share catalogs, some of them are in their showrooms, so they also show actual products. And these are live webinars, so people can come in and ask questions about the products and customization and pricing and all sorts of things. And it also gives you a good opportunity to understand how products are manufactured, because sometimes, the suppliers will have videos to show how products are manufactured in their factories, or maybe they are at their factory and they will actually take their phone out and they will take you around the factory as well. So it really gives you an opportunity to really get up close and personal with suppliers, and also to get a good understanding of what their expertise is and what their capabilities are. So this show is held every month on the last Friday and Saturday of the month. It's held on 2 days, and on each day we go for about 2 to 3 hours, and we feature 4 to 5 suppliers every month. I also want to talk about India Sourcing Trip. This is a trip that I started for Amazon and e-commerce sellers in 2019. Of course, the trip is currently on hold, but hopefully we can start it soon once the majority of the world is vaccinated. So there are a couple of different things that we focus on the India sourcing trip. First of all, there's a lot of learning. So we organize a conference for Amazon sellers where we teach people how to source from India, how to negotiate, where to find suppliers, what sort of cultural sensitivities to be aware of. It's almost like a crash course in sourcing from India. And then, of course, we travel to the Delhi Fair, where we actually do guided tours to help people source products. And we also teach people how to talk to exhibitors, how to collect information, what kind of information to gather, and how to select products from India as well, because India has very specific products and not every product from India is Amazonable. So we have a lot of coaches traveling with the group as well, and they teach people how to do product selection for Amazon specifically. And then we also have some cultural activities. So India is a very culturally rich country, and we host a Bollywood night where we invite a dance troupe to do some Indian dance, and everybody can sort of wear Indian attire if they want to, and get a feel of Indian culture. And then this is the fair that we visit, Indian Handicrafts and Gifts Fair. It's also known as the Delhi Fair. And the trip is done every April and October, and the dates are around the Delhi Fair. Here are just some pictures from the previous India sourcing trip that we had hosted. So this is the conference that we had done. It's a full day conference where we have various experts talking about different things. And as I mentioned, it's almost like a crash course on sourcing from India. And this is a trade show over here. This is one of the coaches that we had from India. She's a wood product specialist. So here we are in a wooden product stall, and people are taking notes, and she's just basically talking about the different types of wood and what to look for in a wooden product when you're checking on the quality. And then we also had coaches, as I mentioned. So Tim Jordan is one of the coaches on the trip as well. Apart from that, we have coaches from Australia and the US. And basically the coaches help people with product selection and also supplier, just to talk to suppliers. And here are some of the pictures from the factory visit that we did. So we usually visit 2 factories in India, and then we also go to the Taj Mahal, which is one of the 7 wonders of the world. So if you are visiting India, then of course you have to take a trip to the Taj Mahal. And this is the Bollywood night that I was mentioning just now. So we had this dance troupe come in, and people could just dress in Indian attire and dance to Bollywood tunes. All right, so that's it for my presentation. And if you would like more information, or if you would like to get in touch with me, join my Facebook group. Just search for India Sourcing or Sourcing from India on Facebook and join the Facebook group. We regularly do webinars. We invite experts to do live webinars in the group, and there are lots of other resources and support that is provided to you in the group to help you source products from India. And thank you very much for listening to my presentation, and enjoy the rest of the conference. Bye-bye.